Morning class. Today's lesson is lesson 5-6. It's on multiplying fractions by whole numbers. And that leads us, of course, to our purpose is to multiply fractions by whole numbers. No vocabulary. I do have an illustration I want you to go ahead and record. You can either record this at the back or just prior to doing the first example. Let me go ahead and show you what it really means when we multiply a whole number by a fraction. Here we have 3 times 1/4. What does that mean? Well, let me go ahead and pull this over. That means we've got 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. We've got 3 1/4. 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. And in the end, what does that equal? Well, we have a total of 3/4. Similar to a whole number times a whole number. You're taking 3 groups of that particular number. Here we have 3 groups of 1/4. 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 3/4. Make sure you place all that information on this slide in your notes. Next, we've turned to the first example. How do we actually do this? Well, what I want you to go ahead and think of when we multiply a whole number by a fraction, in this case it's 5 times 1/8, I want you to think of 5 as a fraction. How do we put 5 as a fraction? Well, we know that 5 over 1 is the same thing as 5. Fraction bar indicates division. 5 divided by 1 is 5. So a fraction, an improper fraction, at that represents 5 is 5 over 1. So we're going to take 5 times 1/8. We're going to convert it to 5 over 1 times 1/8. Now we're going to multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. This is actually easier than adding or subtracting fractions. 5 times 1 is 5. 1 times 8 is 8. Our answer is 5/8. Same thing as 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8. We add those 5 groups of 1/8 together and we'll get 5/8 as well. Second example, 4 times 7/8. Same thing. We go ahead and write down 4 times 7/8. We stick a 1 underneath the 4, so now we have numerators and denominators. We multiply. 4 times 7 is 28. 1 times 8 is 8. Now we're going to go ahead and make sure that we're simplified here. 28 divided by 8 is the same thing as 28 over 8 is the same thing as 28 divided by 8. How many 8s go into 28? Well, I know there are 4. I know there aren't 4. There are actually 3. And 3 times 8 I know is 24. So that leaves us with 4 8s left, which we simplify down to 3 1/2. Example 3. Here we're doing a little bit of algebra. We're just going to go ahead and substitute a fraction for a variable. Here it says evaluate 6x for each value of x. Write each answer in simplest form. X equals 2/3. So we're going to take 6x, or 6 times x, and we're going to multiply 6 instead of times x. We're going to replace it with 2/3. So I'm going to replace that with the 2/3. Notice I didn't use the multiplication sign. I used the parentheses. 6 times 2/3, same thing. Now I'm going to put a 1 underneath the 6 because it's the same thing as 6. Now I just multiply the numerators and the denominators. 6 times 2 equals 12. 1 times 3 is 3. 12 over 3 is the same thing as 12 divided by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So our answer here is 4. Here's our last example. This example is a word problem. It says any proposed amendment to the U.S. Constitution must be ratified or approved by 3/4 of the states. When the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery was proposed back in 1865, There were 36 states. How many states needed to ratify this amendment in order for it to pass? So, what is it that they want us to find out? Well, they want us to find out essentially how many of the 36 states were required to actually pass this amendment. So I know I'm going to take 3/4 of 36. What is 3/4 of 36? That should give me a smaller number than 36. And I know that's going to be more than half of 36. And if I think about that in my estimation, it's going to be more than 18 because 18 is half of 36. So it's be more than 18. So I'm going to put that in a cloud as well. My answer is going to be greater than 18. Now I need to know and understand that of means to multiply. When you're dealing with fractions, 3/4 of 36 means multiply, and this is so important. Of means multiplication. Okay? Kind of like the fraction bar means division. Of with fractions means multiplication. So we're going to convert 3/4 of into 3/4 times 36. Of course, we're going to do the same exact thing that we've done before. We're going to change this whole number into a fraction by just putting a 1 over it. Then we're going to multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. Now 36 times 3, I'm going to put over here on the side, that's 18. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. So we have a total of 108 on the top and 4 on the bottom. Now 108/4 I can go ahead and further figure out or simplify. 108 divided by 4. 4 goes into 10 twice. Bring down the 8. 7. So 27 states needed to ratify this in order for it to pass. Is it greater than 18? Absolutely. So 27 states are what we're looking at. Lastly, these are your two problems. Choose the expression that is correctly multiplied. Here we have 2 times 3/7 and 2 times 3/7. Which one is the correct one? Is it that one or is it that one? And then finally, you're going to find out what is 3/5 of 20. Remember what of needs to be substituted with. All right, we'll see you in class.